So here is the quote. So this is from Deepak Chopra, and he says, "You can't make positive choices for the rest of your life without an environment that makes those choices easy, natural, and enjoyable." So you can't make positive choices for the rest of your life without an environment that makes those choices easy, natural, and enjoyable. And even that word at the end, like the enjoyable, I was like, what? Like these things could be enjoyable. And what's been, so interesting to me over the last, about 7 years, I've been making YouTube videos for 7 years, and I've like loved the community and the interaction in the comments. And then a couple years after that, we started our membership group, which has been going strong now for 5 years. And that's when I really got to like get in the trenches with other women. And what surprised me and also saddened me and kind of disappointed me was how hard we are on ourselves as women about the things that we're not doing, that we're not keeping our house up, that we're not budgeting well, we're not eating healthy, we're wasting food, we're not involving our kids with cleaning, we're not teaching them the skills that we want to. All of these things that we feel like we should be doing. And I've talked about that word should before, right? There's so many things. And in our membership group more recently, this year in the new year, we actually added a household planning meeting every Sunday morning, because I heard this quote that said like, as women running a household, we're actually running a small business. Like running a household is the equivalent of running a small business. We have budgets and projects and contractors to manage and employees to manage, right? Like our family members and everything, lots of inventory to manage. And when we kind of shift our thinking and look at it that way, it's like, yeah, this is, and it's important. And it actually does take a fair amount of work that we don't often, schedule into our week. We just try to fit it in. But I say all that to say, it was so interesting to me. And the reason we added in this household planning meeting was because so many of the women in our group are like, I'm failing at meal planning every week. I'm failing at keeping my cleaning routines up. I'm failing at decluttering regularly. I'm failing at losing weight and budgeting and all these things. And I'm like, oh my goodness, as women, we have so many things that we feel like we should be doing and that we're failing at. Not to mention being like a good spouse and daughter and friend and mom and all those things too, right? Like the list is so long of things we feel like we should be doing and that we should be doing better at. And so that's again where when I saw this quote, you can't make positive choices for the rest of your life without an environment, putting emphasis on the environment that we're in, that makes those choices easy, natural, and enjoyable. And when I saw that and I read it, I'm like, oh, that's what happened when we highly simplified and decluttered our home to the point that we called ourselves minimalists, was that all of these things started to fall into place. Like I felt like, oh, now I have time to go for a walk every day. And so then I started walking, and then it just became a little bit easier to eat healthier. And then we got our budget under control and got out of debt. And I felt like I was more patient with the kids. I wasn't so stressed out all the time from our household. The cleaning systems totally fell into place as we simplified, because it was just easy to clean and, dare I say, enjoyable at times. And so that's why I felt like this quote really summed up what I have experienced, that the foundation for me being successful at all these things I was hoping to, and running this small business of my home and everything that goes into that, the foundation was minimalism and decluttering and creating this environment. And again, when we look at the quote again, it says that makes these choices easy, natural, and enjoyable. And that's absolutely what I experienced. And it's still sometimes surprises me at times, because I think like, well, we're just decluttering. We're just like getting stuff out of our house that, we're not using and isn't that important. Like it's just physical stuff. We're just moving it out of our house, and it's making that big of a difference. But my hope is that this is actually really good news to you, because again, you've probably been beating yourself up like, why don't I have the motivation? Why don't I have the willpower? Why can't I beat my flesh into submission, right? To do these things that I know I need to do and that would benefit myself and my family. Why can't I do that? What if instead we just said, oh, what if I created an environment that was conducive with all these things and made them easy, natural, and enjoyable? So we don't have to look at each of these individually and be like, I need a better meal planning system. I need a better budgeting. We say like, well, stop, hold the phone. First, I'm just going to fully declutter my house. like that. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to put the blinders on to other things, which is totally fine. And I'm just going to get my house decluttered. I'm going to create this environment and then see if those other things don't begin to fall into place. Because like I said, that is absolutely 1000% been my experience. And again, then, being on the other side now here, 10 years removed from all of it, where I can like so confidently tell you like, oh my goodness, get rid of your stuff, because it's the gift that keeps on giving. And these things are absolutely going to fall into place for you. So let's break it down then just a little bit. And I definitely want to leave time for your questions too at the end. That's what I love about getting to be live with you. So I'm going to run through these 4 things quick, and then definitely I want to take questions as well. So if you want to hang on to your questions for right now, that would be awesome. All right. So number 1, realizing that your home is shaping your choices, whether you realize it or not. And so, I've shared research before that, and it shows that when we are in a cluttered environment, that we release the hormone cortisol. We feel stressed, we feel anxious, we feel overwhelmed. So, okay. So again, we're going back to all these habits that we want to get in place, like eating healthier and exercising and being a better parent, right? But then we're in a cluttered space that is releasing stress hormones so that we feel stressed and anxious and overwhelmed, right? Do we see like where the disconnect is? And so, I think, again, this quote is absolutely right, that we don't have an environment that's conducive. So these things aren't easy, natural, or enjoyable. But again, there's nothing wrong with you. It's your environment that is sabotaging you. So again, there's nothing wrong with you. And that's where we come back to this idea of putting our efforts fully into decluttering, creating this environment, and seeing the other things fall into place. All right, number 2 is that decision fatigue is keeping you stuck. So decision fatigue is keeping you stuck. And what I mean by this is that we don't realize how many decisions we make in a day. I'm trying to remember now. I know I read it. My goodness, I can't remember. It's like thousands of decisions that we make every single day. And so, from when we get up in the morning, what time are we going to get up? Are we going to get up the first time our alarm goes off, or are we going to hit snooze? Are we going to make the bed or not make the bed? Are we going to brush our teeth first or go do this? Or what are we going to wear? What are we going to have for breakfast? And so the goal is to actually automate as many of these decisions as possible, because our brain can only handle so many decisions in a day. And I think I probably like it. I've heard it said that we start out the day with like a portion of willpower or bandwidth, or like emotional bandwidth. And you've experienced this, I'm sure, that at the beginning of the day, it's like, okay, I can make pretty good, sound decisions. But then we use that up throughout the day. And so by the end of the day, it's like all bets are off, right? And that's just very normal and natural. So again, I want to normalize that and validate that if that has been your experience, and by the end of the day, you don't care about cooking dinner, you don't have the willpower to avoid like the cookies that my mom brought home the other day, right? You're not as patient with the kids. That's all very normal. And so again, though, then it comes back to, how can I set up my environment so I don't have so many decisions to make? Well, I can create a uniform. I can create a habit of, I don't make my bed every morning, but I could straighten it, right? Just so it feels a little bit better. I can have a morning routine. I know exactly when I walk into the bathroom, exactly what I'm going to do. I have a get ready bin. Everything I use to get ready is in there. I pull it out, I get ready, I put it back. I put on my predetermined outfit for the day. Like, I've simplified my clothes so much that I just literally walk up, throw something on, and like go about my day, right? Some people like to lay out their clothes for the day. And so we start to automate these. And then we also know too, like, I can't have cookies in the house because at 8 o'clock at night, I will eat them all, right? Not all, like I don't sit down with the whole package and eat them all, but it's like one at a time as I'm walking by the pantry, right? And so we begin to set up this environment so we don't have so many decisions to make, and we don't have to use so much willpower when we're making these decisions. All right, number 3 is clutter isn't just stuff, it's a constant to-do list. And so I love when I run into in public, and probably the 2 things that I'm often told have stood out the most, like what ideas have resonated the most with women in the United States. And there's two. One is the idea of inventory, that everything in our home is inventory that we have to manage. And a very close second is the silent to-do list. And so I love the book Goodbye Things by Fumio Sasaki. He's the one that coined the term the silent to-do list. And what he said was that every physical thing in our house or at the Airbnb where we're at, every physical thing is telling us something to do. Pick me up, wash me, maintain me, keep me safe, keep me dry, don't forget about me, use me, whatever. And so the idea of the silent to-do list. And so again, that's why the research about clutter releasing stress hormones makes so much sense, because all of this stuff is just trying to get our attention and telling us all the things that we need to do with it. And we often don't realize it and realize the stress we've been living with until we get it moved out and we're like, oh my goodness, like my house is so much quieter now, right? And so the silent to-do list is huge. And what's interesting too in the research about clutter releasing stress hormones and everything is that it impacts women more than men. And I know I've shared this before, but I think it's important to recognize that for most of us as women, we are the chief inventory managers in our home, and that list of things, the things that are being, told to do is falling on our shoulders, not others. And even though we try to like recruit family members and get others to help, usually we're still the director and the manager too, again, of our small business, telling everybody what to do. So ultimately, for most of us as women, that all falls on our shoulders. And so, again, I think in the past, when I first started decluttering our house, it was meant to just be a housekeeping tactic. I'm like, okay, well, I'm a naturally messy person. Maybe if I get rid of all of our stuff, then I'll finally be able to stay on top of our house. And that absolutely happened, right? As I decluttered and got rid of stuff, it was easy to keep the house clean, to follow through with. I still didn't have like a formal cleaning routine, but to clean as I went and to, if people were coming over, to clean up and all of that absolutely happened. I did not expect all the other benefits that followed from it, that I mentioned before, like being able to eat healthy, cook more at home, be a better parent, go on walks daily, get out of debt, all of those things. And now I can look back and see like, oh, I took off that pressure of that constant nagging, a silent to-do list that was releasing the stress hormones and making me feel anxious. I removed that from my environment, and now it is a very peaceful space that is conducive with developing new habits and using bandwidth to try new recipes and to cook differently and to meal plan and to budget and all of these things. So again, like to keep coming back to this idea, let's set the environment first before we try to get all of these other systems in place. And so set the environment first, declutter first, and then try to develop new habits around these things that we feel like we should be doing. I use that word so carefully. I don't like that word, right? All right. And then number 4, a cluttered home puts strain on everyone and our relationships. So again, if clutter is making us feel stressed and anxious, and then we have to interact with our family members, are we always able to respond the way that we would like to? No, especially at the end of the day, again, when our willpower and bandwidth is shot, right? And so that again was one of the like really surprising benefits to me. I felt like when our kids were little and our house was a mess that I really wasn't patient with them a lot. And I also I didn't enjoy spending time with them all the time, right? It felt stressful. It felt like they were crabby and off a lot of the time. And so as we simplified and decluttered, then it just became so easy to pick up the toys and to include them in cooking and to take time to go outside and play because I didn't feel like I needed to be inside. It also gave me a lot of clarity around how much inventory kids need and what type of stuff. So I no longer felt like they needed a lot of toys or a lot of craft supplies. I just like, I didn't feel like I needed to do like STEM projects or sensory bins because I had learned like literally let them play in the grass. That's sensory, right? Or let them play with water. Like I didn't feel this like pressure to be like manufacturing all of these things. I was like, wow, we could just literally spend time outside. And now I can do that because my house isn't nagging me so much. Or I can set up an environment for them to play, which again is very simple and just like cardboard boxes and masking tape and painter's tape and those kinds of things, right? Create an environment that is very conducive, and then they can play on their own, and it doesn't always have to include me, and I don't have to solve their boredom problem. They're able to do it on their own and get fully engrossed in play, and it's win-win. They're happy and content and creative and getting along well, and then I can do the other things that I was hoping to get done in the day. So I couldn't believe how much it improved my relationship with them as well. And I feel like they have gotten a mom that is much less stressed and less anxious and able to just, when something comes up, like it just be like, all right, we'll figure it out. It's not that big a deal. We just got a new dishwasher at my parents right before Christmas. It worked 3 times total, but intermittently, and then, like, it has an app you install, and then it's like, "Water leak detected." I don't see any water anywhere, so I'm like, "What's going on?" And so then we run it again, and it's like, "Water leak detected." I'm like, "There's no water. What's going on?" And then we do it again, and then, "Oh, now there is water dripping down into the basement below it," right? But just, the things that just, like, come up in life, it's like, okay, we're controlling the things we can control, like our environment, and then the other things as they come up, now I have the ability, again, and the bandwidth to better be able to navigate them. And I want to model that to my kids. Like, I want to keep things in proper perspective. Some things are a big deal and we should get a little, upset about them. But most of the things, like, actually aren't that big of a deal, right? Matt Diavella had one time on one of his videos talked about a 5-year rule. He said, like, when he's starting to feel stressed or anxious about something, he'll be like, will this matter in 5 years? And I'm like, oh, wow, like, that's an awesome perspective. But again, even to be able to entertain that question, you have to have the capacity to do so, right? You have to be out of fight or flight, like, if you're going to use the logical center of your brain. And so that comes from getting our environment in order. Again, making these things easy and enjoyable. I forgot the third word. What was the third word? Let's put it up again. Here we go. Easy, natural, and enjoyable. Yeah, and I like that word natural too, because again, I think most of us think when we're trying to eat healthy and exercise and get out of debt, like all these hard things, right? All we think about is our failures in the past, and like I said before, like beating our flesh into submission, right? Like it's just going to be HELL, like trying to like get ourselves to do these new things. And it doesn't have to be like that, right? We create the environment first. We simplify and we declutter. We create the environment, and these things do start to feel very natural and almost enjoyable. For me now, going for a walk every day is like a non-negotiable. Like, I miss it if I don't get to. It's so natural. It feels so right. It's like, no, I like crave that every single day. We've set up our environment to eat healthier, and it's just like not a big deal anymore, right? And we're not doing that thing where you're like, we're going to eat healthy, and you buy like all the fruits and veggies and then they mold in the fridge and you feel really bad and you beat yourself up again and you're like, I suck at this, right? We don't do that anymore either, right? And so it becomes easy, natural, and enjoyable, all from setting up an environment like this. And I'm trying to be very careful. Like, I don't want to overstate any of this, or, but I believe it fully to be true, and absolutely what I've experienced and what I've heard from others too, that we declutter, we create the environment, and then all of this stuff, it does easy, natural, and enjoyable. Those would absolutely be the words that I would use to describe it. So, in other words, your home can support the life you want. Your home can support the life you want. So we create the environment, and then we begin to put in the habits that we're hoping to have. So your home can support the life that you want. And again, I hope this is good news, because again, as as women, we're just so stinking hard on ourselves. Why can't I do that? Why did I feel like that? Why do other women do this and I don't? And we do think all the other women have it together, right? In a lot of these areas, like, I always felt like that. How do they stay on top of their homes and everything? And then I realized, like, oh, actually, a lot of them aren't. They put on a good facade, but they actually aren't, right? But man, we're just so hard on ourselves. And so to get to a place where we feel successful. And I've talked about that before too, how I really gained a lot of confidence in myself as I went through this process, both because I followed through with what I set out to do, which was getting our house fully decluttered. And so that gave me a sense of accomplishment and success. But also, again, because unknowingly, I was creating this environment that was making these other things that I really had hoped and wanted to do easy, natural, and enjoyable. So, I'm not selling you anything today other than minimalism, right? There's not like some pitch coming up either of like, do this or do that, whatever. Like I'm just actually trying to promote minimalism right now and say like, hey, if there are things you have been hoping to implement in your life and wanting to feel more successful at, maybe your house has been sabotaging you. And so go all in on the decluttering and creating this environment and just, man, see what happens from there. And I'm like seeing the comments here too of like, yes, I've experienced that. Yes. So true. Like, so that's fun and I love it. And again, I have heard this from, so many other women too. So that's where I'm like, okay, like I'm not the only one that has experienced this. So yeah. Oh goodness, Susan. I am 70 and I have 3 generations in my home. So stressful. Yeah, because wow, that is so much inventory that you are likely having to live with and manage. And then the people on top of it too. So much, Susan. That is so much. Um, you've helped me realize that clutter is a constant reminder of what I wasted money on. Best to get rid of that reminder. Yeah, right. Could we just be kind to ourselves and let all of that go? I've been saying this more recently too, that every purchase we make is trial and error. You buy a stand mixer thinking like it'll work great for bread and bun cakes, right? But you don't know. And we try to do our best to research it or listen to others or draw from their experiences. But ultimately, we do not know until we get it into our house and try it and use it if it is going to solve the problem that we're hoping it's going to. Every single purchase, whether it's a shirt, something to wear, something in the kitchen, gadgets, other things, we buy it with good intentions, thinking that it is going to make our life better or easier, but we don't know until we get it in our home. Skin, hair care, all those things, cleaning products, we don't know. We trust other people's opinions and what they say about it, we don't know. And so if we can kind of step back, look at this stuff and be like, hey, I didn't know, right? But it didn't work out. I could keep it, but that's not creating the environment that's going to be conducive with these other things that I want to achieve. Or I could let it go and not be reminded of it, not have to manage it, and become more successful in these other areas. Well, that's kind of a no-brainer when you look at it like that, right? But in the moment, I know all we're thinking about is what we spent on it and all of that. So totally get it. That's why we have to stick together. Let's see. So if you have a question, I'd love to answer it. If you put a question mark in front of it, it makes it a little bit easier for me to grab. Teresa says, I'm really stressed with storing kids' clothes. I have 5 boys, newborn to 9, and will most likely have more children soon. Do you only keep current sizes and donate the rest? I'm drowning in bins. Great question, Teresa. So I always had, we were kind of fortunate because we have 2 girls, then 2 boys. So I had 1 bin of clothes for the girls to grow into and 1 bin for the boys. So I limited it to 1 bin, and I would only keep the most high quality favorite pieces. So those went into the bin if the bin was full. And then like my cousin was great about giving us hand-me-downs for the boys and they were good quality. I liked them. But if she gives me a bag of clothes, I have to go to the bin and something has to give, whether it's the stuff she just gave me or stuff comes out of the bin, but it always all had to fit back into the bin because you could like spend your whole days and weeks managing kids' clothes otherwise. And for most of us, that's not the highest and best use of our time. So limit how much you keep, and it's going to force you to be a little pickier with the stuff you keep and it hopefully less stressful. Kids' clothes are actually fairly easy to come by. And so, once in a while we'd have to run to the thrift store and grab something, but I was okay with that because we were managing such little inventory and the kids actually started wearing out their clothes, which felt really good too. Yeah, Catherine says, yes, I beat myself up about wasting money in the past. I love that when those things are gone, I'll no longer have the reminder of that. Yes, 1000%. And we've all done it. Like we all have done it. We all do it. I still make mistakes from time to time. But again, I don't even look at it like a mistake because I'm like, well, I thought it was going to do this or that or fit me this way or I was going to feel this way in it or whatnot, right? So it still we can't know. Like it's all trial and error until we get into our home and we try it out and we know for sure. Let's see. I also love the idea too of having a donation bin right in your closet and your kids' closets too. And again, the girls are great now about decluttering their clothes, but there are still times when I cringe when they bring down like full garbage bags of clothes and they're like, we can donate all these. And I'm like looking in there, I'm like, you wore that like once. That still has the tags on it. I loved this. Why don't you wear this? Why don't you like it? Right. And I've had to be like, nope. Like they're 13 and 15. They're going to wear what they want to wear. I mean, for special occasions, I still have like veto power, but mostly, 98% of the time, they're just picking out and wearing what they want to wear. And so I want them to go through this process and I want them to let go of things that don't fit or they don't feel good in. But also it does kind of stink at times too. How do you keep garages and basements free of clutter? So I think it's really important to remember that there's two pieces to the puzzle when it comes to storage spaces. One is three pieces. First, we declutter it. We simplify it as much as possible. Then we put in simple organization. If you know your Clutterbook style, that can be really helpful. So we declutter, we simply organize. Like when you don't have a lot of stuff left, it's pretty easy to organize it. And then we maintain it. And so usually the breakdown with storage spaces, garages, and basements and attics is the maintenance piece, right? Like I tell the kids like, hey, go put this away in the basement and they set it on the floor. It doesn't go back in the bin. It doesn't. And so I have to, again, chief inventory manager in the house, right? I have to go back and either have them come back down and put it away or I put it away. But regardless, it's the maintenance piece. And again, this is where we get hard on ourselves as women because we're like, oh, I decluttered and I put organization into place and it didn't work because we forget about the maintenance piece. Like it's still not going to do it for us. And so if the maintenance is still just feeling like an uphill battle and way too hard, then we go back to the beginning and we have to declutter some more. It means you probably still have too much inventory. So then we do another layer of the onion, declutter a little more, double check our organization is still working for this space. And then we keep working on maintaining it again. All right. I have been decluttering for 3.5 years with the goal of becoming minimalistic. I have just a little bit more to go, but I can't seem to close on it. Why? Any ideas? I would say two different things. One would be, once I got like 70% of the way through our house and my initial questions were, have I used this in the last year? Do I know for sure I'll use it in the coming year? And if not, goodbye, right? But then you get to the next layers of the onion where there's stuff you have used. And so I had to switch my question to, but could I get by without it? Because I did thoroughly believe by that point that having even less inventory to manage was going to benefit me. So I switched my question. But could I get by without this? Joshua Becker, I think he asked, like, what would I use instead if I didn't have it? Turns out, like, most of these things we can get by without. So could I get by without it? What would I use instead? So we can go a little bit further. But I think the other thing that's important once you get further down the path is to ask yourself, what am I excited about doing with my time and energy once I get my house decluttered? Like, where do I want to put all this effort now? Because if we don't always know what's next or what I'm going to do with this extra time, sometimes we almost kind of hang on to it, I feel like, because it just feels comfortable, right? It feels more natural to keep the stuff and keep it how it is than to go even further, which can push us outside of our comfort zone just a little bit. So I would be curious, like, is there something that you're excited about spending your time on? And in the very beginning, when I was first starting this, I had just started my first blog, I Think We Could Be Friends. And I really wanted time to spend on that. We had 4 kids, ages 4 and under, which obviously took a fair amount of time too. But in the little other times that I had, I really wanted to be able to work on my blog and grow that and develop that. And so that was very motivating to me to go further with our home because I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the extra time that I was freeing up. So I would be curious if you have any ideas about what you want to do with the extra time that you're freeing up. Cynthia says, I have a bunch of furniture and kitchen gadgets that my daughter wants. She will be moving out in 6 months and has nowhere to store these items. What do I do? Yeah, unfortunately, Cynthia, then they probably just have to live in your house for now. Try and keep them boxed up neatly. Also, try not to keep too much extra. I know so many women in our membership group thought their kids would want all of this stuff. Like, hey, this is so helpful. You don't have to go buy it. And a lot of it their kids did not actually want. So if she has approved every item and you know for sure she wants it, great. But otherwise, I would err on trying to store as little and give her as little as possible, because there might be stuff in there that she doesn't actually need or want. So if you can reduce the amount you're storing, it would probably be helpful too. Tanya says, what's the rules for decluttering cozy blankets? I love how do you say it again? Hygge and cozy blankets are a big thing, but the closet is bothering me as well. Yeah, I would say we had one cozy blanket per person. And so, and a lot of them stayed in bedrooms, not like in our main living space. And so, yeah, I mean, I love me. Well, you know me. I love throw pillows and I love cozy blankets too, especially in the winter in Minnesota. Um, but it's understanding where does it cross that line into clutter, because clutter is anything that we're keeping but not using. And so how many blankets can you actually use at a time? So okay, everyone's on the couch watching a movie night, family movie night, yay. How many blankets do we actually need? And then being willing to let go of some of them, even though they're perfectly good and probably are cute too. Charity says, after my Nana passed, I inherited a lot of her things. I have a dresser and some dishes displayed, but I can't let go of the other stuff without feeling like I am betraying her. Help. Yeah. No, Charity, I'm glad you said that, because I know a lot of women feel that way. I would highly recommend reading the book, Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff by Matt Paxton. He talks about the legacy list and curating a legacy list. I'm trying to think if I'm meshing two books together, but no, I don't believe so. Peter Walsh also has a great book too called Let It Go. That's about downsizing. But I do particularly like the Matt's Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff, just because it really does help to switch our perspective. And he really takes it through the lens of honoring our loved one. And so how can we both honor them while also letting go of a lot of their stuff? And so I would definitely recommend checking out that book. And most libraries have it as well. I am 67 and I was the person that took all the pictures because I love it. I now have over 100 albums, 500 pics in each album. How can I organize this? And albums take up so much room. Yeah. I would recommend Miss Freddie on Instagram has a course on going through both physical photos and digital photos. She's on Facebook too. But Miss Freddie, she talks all about that. That's kind of a bear. So it's not something like I can just answer like, really quickly here. So I would check out like a resource like that, so you have like a really clear game plan for how to tackle it. How do I approach these places in a home that have all the things, not one function, stuff collecting, boxes in front of the closet craziness? They are under my stairs, drive me nuts. So onion method. So what do? We first go in, Dana from A Slob Comes Clean, she'll say, look for trash. And you're like, there's not trash in there. She'll be like, look for trash. There's always trash in there, right? And there's packaging, there's broken things. And so we first go in and we look for easy stuff, because you've built it up in your head like, oh no, it's all hard stuff and it's all, deferred decisions. And I put it there because I didn't know what to do with it. Like, what am I going to do with it? The truth is, it is not all hard, and there are easy things in there. And especially if we've been spending any amount of time together, your mindset is shifting around it. Even today, we're talking about, okay, I want to create an environment that's conducive with this lifestyle I want to have, right? If I think about my like ideal lifestyle of how I eat and sleep and exercise and relate to others, I want to create an environment that supports that. Okay, so I can't have all of this extra stuff. Well, I'm starting to look at that stuff a little differently now. Now there's a cost to storing it and having it, right? But always just go in and look for easy stuff. If there are things that feel especially hard right now, you just set it aside, move past it. We don't have to deal with the hard stuff right away. You can just look for the easy, medium, easy stuff. And that's great for debulking, like getting rid of some of the inventory. So then we have a little more room to move around and look at what's left. Let's see. Leslie Ann says, I'm at the beginning of my weight loss journey. As I lose the weight, do you suggest I donate everything immediately? That starts to get a little too big. Well, that's a very personal decision, definitely. If you feel very confident that this you're going to maintain this and whatnot, then yeah, I would let it go, right? But otherwise, what others do is just have like one toter bin that you put your favorite pieces into that you might store. Some see that like, oh, if I keep them, then it's like permission to go back to that size. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. You can use like Rubbermaid totes. I also like the canvas zip around bags from Amazon. They're just like a really nice size and they're easy to store. So totally up to you. I'd be curious what others do when you're losing weight too. So that's awesome, Leslie Ann. Like, way to go. That's exciting. Good work. Oh, Steffi, how do you guys deal with a husband that hoards things and just sets them everywhere? It gives me so much anxiety. He says he never gets time. Yeah. Yeah, that is so hard. Um, a couple things. Talking to him about like what you're learning about clutter, like, hey, I'm learning clutter releases stress hormones and this feels stressful to me. Joshua Becker would say look for common ground. And so if there are particular areas of the home that you're kind of in charge of or that you spend more time in, so like, I was kind of in charge of the kitchen, then it would be like, hey, could we agree? So can we find common ground? Could we agree that I would like for the counters to be able to be totally cleared off at the end of the evening when I run the dishwasher. And so this stuff that's been piling up here, can we find a different home for it? Could we agree that it'd be really nice if we could park the cars in the garage instead of outside of them? And so looking for common ground, modeling it. So any areas that you have control over, you getting your areas and your things decluttered and simplified. It's remarkable to me how many women will say that when they decluttered their stuff in their areas, they couldn't believe how much that inspired their husbands, even ones that like were like hyper inventory collectors, right? So it like those are a few ideas and it takes time and it's frustrating. And I'm really sorry about that. I wish there was like a much quicker answer to it. I've shared before, like it took Tom like 5 years before he was ready to go all in on his stuff. Now he didn't always keep tons of inventory, mostly in the garage and stuff. And he had a lot of clothes, but it took a while for him to come around and it kind of sucked. And there was times it was frustrating. And it felt like he was undoing some of the things that I was doing, but he did eventually. And I was really glad for that. So, but I'm sorry, it can be so frustrating. What's your favorite deadline for stuff you're saving to do a project with? Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on the project, but put a deadline on the project. Like if you're gonna, stencil your backsplash, say like, okay, it has to be done by the end of Memorial Day weekend or whatever. Otherwise, I'm just not gonna do it and I'm getting rid of it. Or if you want a scrapbook or whatnot, quilt, putting some kind of deadline on it. But it kind of depends on the project. So I don't know if I have a one standard deadline. Deidre says, I have 3 older kids who are beginning to live their own lives on their own, and they have their entire room still intact. How do I begin to get them to get their things or call their things? Yeah. So most of what I've heard from others is just to set, again, come some kind of deadline, like, hey, I'm so glad that I've been able to house, your stuff for this amount of time. And now I'm ready for it to move out to your spaces. So we're gonna, by the end of Memorial Day weekend or by the end of this weekend, I would like for you to go through it and decide what you want to keep. I know some parents also will like FaceTime with their kids, especially if you believe there's stuff in their rooms that could go that they're really not attached to. You can FaceTime or Zoom with them and say, hey, would it be okay if, I donated this and this and this and get their permission? If they're like, yes to that, no to that, you're like, okay, I'm going to set this aside for you. But then, I would like it to leave by the end of this time or weekend. You don't have to be apologetic or feel bad about that, right? Like how cool that you kept their stuff for this long and now you would like for it to move out. Totally reasonable. Rebecca says, I'm so close to being done decluttering. Yay me. Yeah, yay you. Rebecca, that's awesome. However, I'm feeling lost now. Is that normal? Any advice? Yes. Very common. Lots of women will say like, it feels bare. I feel disoriented. Some will even say I feel a little bit anxious when it's so simplified. And again, that's where I'd come back. What I talked about just a little bit ago is like, what are you excited to do with your time now. In the beginning for me, it was blogging. More recently, I've loved being able to raise money for Dorothy's house and do our bundt cake recipe book and everything. Now I'm going back to school and getting my master's in psychology because I can, right? Like, I don't know, like there's not, like, I don't have to, I don't know. It just was like, hey, I would have the capacity to do that now, right? So is there something that is exciting to you that you would use this time for? Is there a place you'd like to volunteer, or something new you would like to learn, or classes you would like to do? I love like Jane Morrell Stewart now when she talks about like line dancing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, if there was here, and I don't think there is in Minnesota, a place to go line dancing, sign me up for that. That would be so much fun, right? So like maybe I need to start my own line dancing place. So if you want to line dance in the Twin Cities, let me know. Like, go take a poll. So, but yeah, like, what would you be excited about spending your time on now? Yeah, how do you go about sorting photos? Such a big project. So I would find a resource like Miss Freddie, just like a real clear, like step-by-step plan. Oh, yeah. Andrea says, lost 30 pounds. It took me a year before I decided I was not going to regain. Yeah, I think that's great, right? So for some, it's kind of like, oh, I need to like let a little time pass or whatever. So good to see you, Andrea. Let's see. I feel like my life with stuff because, oh, I feel like I fill my life with stuff because I may feel sad and alone. Shopping helps me getting hits of dopamine. Absolutely. How can I get that same hit of dopamine without going out shopping? Love this question. This is so good. So I first learned this and realized this. We did a spending freeze to save money so that we could fly to Florida instead of having to drive there. So my parents were taking us to Disney World. So they were paying for the tickets for Disney, and they rented the Airbnb down there, which was so generous of them. And we just had to get ourselves and our 4 kids down there, right? And so we were going to drive, and our kids were, man, like 3 through 8 at the time, maybe. And from Minnesota down to Florida, it's a full 2 day drive, right? Like 22 hours or something. And I'm just thinking about that, and I'm like, I don't know. And one of ours gets real motion sick, like in the car. It's not good, not good. So we're like, okay, what if we do a spending freeze, and if we like look around the house and sell stuff that we have and see if we could like save the money? And at that time, we were like all in on the Dave Ramsey program and getting out of debt. So we knew like if we were going to buy plane tickets, like it had to be above and beyond of our normal budget or whatever. And so, yeah, everything, unless we had a gift card for it, we stopped spending money. And what was so cool during that time was that I started to relearn like some of the natural dopamine things that we get, like reading a fiction book, taking a bubble bath at the end of the day, going for a walk, even cleaning like gives us dopamine. It releases too, to look back on a space and have it be all neat and tidy. And so, there's a detox period with it for sure. I would say it probably took a week. And probably at that time, like I wasn't a big spender, but it'd be like Target, Dollar Spot, Dollar Store, coffee, not even Starbucks, like gas station coffee, right? Or a Diet Coke at the gas station or whatever. And it was during that time too, I actually learned how to, like I mastered like making caramel macchiatos at home or whatever, right? And so you like learn how to make these things at home. And even that was like really satisfying and fun too. So anyways, all that to say, it does take a little intentionality, but there are lots of other ways to get dopamine releases outside of shopping. Sally says, I've been decluttering for about 5 years. I seem to have hit the wall. How do I truly keep on decluttering, not just head on surface? I not a minimalist, but don't want to slide backwards. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's helpful to bring some community around it. Like that's why we have our membership group. Or is there just someone in your natural context that you could like buddy up with and let them know like what your goals are, what you want to keep working on? But yeah, no, that's tough. 5 years is quite a while to be, decluttering. Fair that you feel like you've hit a wall. And also switching that question though too, like, but could I get by without this? And knowing like, is there anything that excites you about what you would spend your extra time and energy on once you feel like you've gotten into maintenance mode with decluttering? Tracy says, I've saved almost every school paper from all 4 of my kids. Now they are grown and I have bins of unorganized papers. I've never really looked back on them much, but don't even know where to start. So what I would recommend is getting a memory bin for each of your kids. And so that then when you do start to go through the bins of all of their papers, you can just, like, as you're going through, you can just pull out the most important ones and put them into your memory bin. And it's important to have the memory bin because that creates like a container or limit to how much you're going to keep. And so I've shown our kids memory bins. They're like a half tote size, like a half of a Rubbermaid tote. You could have a regular Rubbermaid tote, but it gives a limit. And what's fascinating, and unless you've tried it, you might not realize it, that as you hold something up, you're asking yourself, like, is this worth taking up space in their memory box or not? And a lot of the things won't be, especially as it starts to fill up a little bit. So I would get memory boxes for each of them and then start going through them and only put the most important things into their memory boxes. Lisa says, I've been working on decluttering for the past couple of years. The mentorship group and morning body doubling sessions are helpful, but most spaces still feel hard. Any hope it will get easier? Yeah, I wish we had our mountain of decluttering. Yeah, there's a tipping point, definitely, where it gets easier. So we usually show like a mountain and it's uphill. It is hard in the beginning. Again, you're confronted with every wrong decision you made, a buying decision. You feel guilty. It's physically intensive. Decision fatigue is real, right? You're just like one thing after another. Do I want it? Do I use it? Oh my goodness, right? And so that's all very real. And so we're going up the mountain and it's hard. And something switches in our brains though. And we get to this like top point and we're like, I don't want to keep spending all my time on this anymore. And I want to create an environment that is conducive and supportive and makes my goals easy, natural, and enjoyable. And we start to look at the stuff differently. We're like, you require my time and energy. You are silent to-do list. I don't want to take care of you anymore. You're not adding value. I don't use you. You're just clutter. And then it gets much easier. So yes, it does get easier. And you're probably in the messy middle right now that we call it. But keep sticking with it. And I promise it will, like, if you stick with it, it will get easier. Probably shouldn't say I promise, but I really do fully believe that. Anne says, which insights from your minimalism journey do you bring to your psychology study and fellow students? Yeah, it's been really interesting. I'm trying to think what would probably be the most. I would say probably still what resonates the most is the hierarchy of happiness or hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's that pyramid I've showed before. But still, and when I explain this to others too, like the idea that physical items are only in the first 1 to 2-ish layers, that once we have food, clothing, shelter, those basic needs met in basic ways, that getting nicer clothing and nicer cars and nicer houses, it's very short-lived and it doesn't actually lead to overall satisfaction and fulfillment. That comes from moving up and deepening our relationships and self-actualization, which is kind of like what we're talking about today, about what would I do with my time and energy? Who would I help? What would I contribute? How will I make an impact? And I really, again, I think that because most of us have been living in these cluttered environments for so long and we don't realize how our environment is sabotaging us, we don't get to think about those things and enjoy that, like that self-actualization and that growth and that learning and helping others and contributing. We just get so bogged down in this, like this first base layer, managing all of this crap that we have accumulated. And so, I mean, thank you for asking that. I feel like that actually brings this full circle pretty well as we wind up here, that we weren't meant to manage all of this stuff. Like, it's not how our brain was designed. Our brain is not good at managing inventory. Like, if food is going bad in the back of your fridge, it's because our brains were not designed to manage all of that. If you forget about things and you're like, oh, I forgot about that, or what, your brain was not meant to manage all of that stuff, right? Our brain is meant for survival and to solve problems. And so here we are, just surrounding ourselves with all of this stuff to manage and take care of and not forget about and keep safe and all that. It's not what we were meant for, right? So again, that's why as we simplify, highly simplify, that's how we can create an environment that supports our goals and our dreams and our hopes for the future. And what it mostly does though is it keeps stuff in its proper perspective. It's just stuff. Like, I'm sorry that you wasted money on it. You used money maybe you didn't have, maybe it's still on the credit card. That sucks. Like, that feels so yucky. And I'm sorry about that. And we've all done it. But the worst thing you could do is hang on to that stuff to try and somehow right the wrong of that purchase. But instead, if we will let it go, we're not reminded of the poor purchases. We're creating an environment that's conducive with our goals. It changes everything. It changes everything to the point now where I look at this stuff and I'm like, you are dead to me. Like, get out, catch you later. I'm inviting you to leave my house, right? Like, I don't need you. I don't know. You're just stuff. If you're not serving me, you're gone. And it's a great place to be. And it doesn't happen overnight for most of us, but we keep practicing it and working on it and doing it and sticking together, surrounding ourselves with those who want and believe in the same thing. And yeah, it changes everything, everything. And it's so, so good. I want that for you, right? So anyways, it's been really fun to get to hang out with you today. I love our membership group so much. If you're looking for extra support, extra community, I do videos in there 5 days a week. So we do like a 5-minute video every day with showing, like right now I'm going through my mom's pantry. So we've been working on that the last 2 weeks. I'm just showing the process. We're talking about it together, decluttering it together. Oh man, like it's good. I'll ultimately share it on here on YouTube too, but it's fun to like get to just like go through it together as a community. We do live decluttering every Sunday morning. We do a household planning meeting where we do our meal planning and plan our calendars for the week, go through our action items for our home, which has been so good and so effective too. And so we spend a lot of time, like every day of the week except Saturday. Like I'm in there and we're working together and doing stuff together. And so it's awesome. And I love it. And it's my joy. And it's just been so fun to get to be a part of. So I have the link for that in the description as well. If you're just looking for a little more support, a little more community and accountability and motivation too. Yeah, we've got it pretty dialed in now and it's been awesome. So good. All right. Well, I said I wasn't going to sell anything, but there you go, I guess. So it's there if it's helpful. If not, whatever. We'll keep hanging out together on YouTube. And I love being able to provide lots of resources here too. So awesome. All right. Well, I love you. I hope that you have a really good day. I hope you feel like you have the tools to get your house decluttered because man, let's create that environment and then endless possibilities. It's so good. All right. I love you. I'll see you again soon.